Welcome to the Great Indoors, and today, once again, we're in Barcelona, Spain. This is MWC 2023, and what a week we are having. There are nearly 100,000 people from across the industry and the world here to take part in, without any doubt, the biggest telecoms and technology show on the planet. It's been quite a journey, and it feels incredible to have finally crossed the Atlantic as the GSMA's official podcast sponsor for this unique show. To remind you, we are spending the whole week in an amazing recording facility on the jaw-dropping Amdocs booth, recording some fascinating conversations with the industry's biggest names. I'll be joined by our customers, analysts, partners, and Amdocs executives as we explore their stories and perspectives in podcast format for prosperity. As ever, I'm joined by my co-pilot and producer Larissa Yee as these special edition MWC 2023 episodes continue to roll out every Thursday. And this is number 4. This is episode 4 in this series. And for today, we will be speaking with Cox Communications. Now, following a successful nationwide launch earlier this year, Cox, like many other traditional US cable players, have made the move into the mobile domain, with the objective of combining their offerings to something even better for their customers. This week here in Barcelona, Cox Mobile is continuing the conversation around a connected and converged future. And under their vision, customers will be able to combine Cox Mobile and Cox Internet based on their individual connectivity needs. And experience is way enhanced. It's increasing their affordability. It gives them access to enhanced features and improved performance. Now, Cox customers can expect to see the first converged offers roll out in the next few months. But joining me to talk about Cox's vision is Borda de Castro, VP of Connectivity and Convergence at Cox Communications. So let's get started. Okay, so my next guest here on the Great Indoors at MWC 2023, the official podcast of the GSMA this year, all the way from Atlanta, we have Borda de Castro, who's the AVP of Connectivity and Convergence at Cox Communications. Welcome, Catherine, to the Great Indoors.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So exciting.
No, it is. It's great to have you. Great to have you. And look, as we start, what have you seen so far that has made you go, wow, if anything, by the way?
You know what? I would start off by just even saying that there's so much. Everyone I think is bombarded with what is going on. I'm really interested in kind of what I've seen from a metaverse standpoint.
Right. And
what is that really going to ultimately mean? I'm looking for things that are ultimately going to be meaningful for consumers, right? So, and I know that you all have, an experience here that I need to kind of dig a little bit more into,
it's pretty
right?
Cool.
But I don't want to just necessarily see, an avatar and, shop, in some virtual world. I'm looking for how is this going to be meaningful in consumers' lives. So, I did see some AI that helps a veterinarian, actually, to be specific. You could take an x-ray of your dog. They send it up to the cloud. So you don't necessarily need to have like a new medical device.
Right.
You just send it up to the cloud. It diagnoses it within minutes. It comes back down. I have 2 dogs at home.
Wow.
Both of them are they're a little on the old side. So this was it was relevant. And it was an interesting use case, that felt, again, more meaningful.
It spoke to you as well.
Absolutely.
But the similarity is I have 3 dogs at home, but one of them's a puppy. The other 2 are 15 years of age brothers that we brought over. I live in Canada now. We brought them over from England, and we literally had to take them to the vet for an x-ray the other day because they're getting old. It's costing money. You have to take them to the vet. But what breed are your 2 dogs, Catherine?
A Great Dane.
Okay.
Who is 6, and it starts to get older for that type of dog. And then I have a tiny toy poodle who is 16.
Oh, wow.
So very different ages, but they're up in age there. So so that kind of felt really, I could see the benefit
You could
immediately.
see it straight away.
And so I was talking to, this was South Korea Telecom, and was
Right.
interested on what's the experience for the veterinarian. So it was interesting, like when he said like there's no other medical equipment, right? Like
Yeah.
this should be super simple. And then he felt that the technology was already available within the US. And I said, but your local veterinarians don't have access to this, yes, which really speaks to how emerging
Yeah.
all of these things really are. And sometimes when you're in the technology, and you're the one that's developing, it feels like, oh, this is old news. Everyone has this, and
Yeah.
for the average consumer, they don't, right?
No, exactly. No, but honestly, this is a really great point, and I really like the example you use. And the reason why is there was another example on a guest I had on earlier. They were using private enterprise networks with 5G cloud for a brewery in Boston to monitor the beer in the brewery. But the issue here is we used to build technology for the sake of technology and then say, okay, so what's it now going to do?
Right.
With this new ecosystem, with all the technologies that are coalescing around 5G, it's now a case of, okay, so it's ready to go. What are the problems that this can now solve?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example. It's almost like let the invisible hand of the market guide us to what these things are going to do for everyone and for humanity and society. But it's not like previous iterations of 3G where you had a pretty concrete idea what it was going to do. Right? This time
Right.
around, it's almost, okay, we've built it, they will come kind of mentality.
So you're touching on something that just my attendance here is an example of, which is the transition of, I think, technology being more consumer-centric than it has been in the past, and therefore the attendees has changed dramatically. I was in an interview yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about that exact subject, where, I don't know, 10 years ago, right, this conference was much more engineer heavy, right?
And hardware heavy.
Hardware, about the,
Yeah.
not that we don't talk about the network now, of course we do a lot, but it was just a different take than
Yeah.
it is now, right?
Right.
And so for me, right, I'm primarily focused in marketing. I mean, there's other areas of the business, but I'm always going to be thinking about the consumer and what is the benefit. And not only that, there might be a benefit, but do you need that?
Yes.
Right? Like, I may
Yes,
think
yeah,
that there's
yeah.
a benefit for you, but is that really a need in your life right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
And if you don't have that need, then there is no benefit.
Yes.
And so I think, you're really speaking to how we see technology being a little bit more consumer-centric, and
Yeah.
that really excites me, right? So
Yeah.
again, kind of to the beginning of your question, I don't want the metaverse just to develop in a way that is not going to be consumer-centric.
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
somebody has an idea that's cool,
Yeah.
maybe like not a reason for us to go and develop
Yeah.
it, right? No offense to all of my engineering friends,
No,
right?
no, of course. And we have lots of them, as I can imagine. So give me a little bit of a history of yourself, Catherine, for our listeners, and your role at Cox Communications.
Yeah, so I actually started my career in consumer packaged goods, right?
Right.
So that is kind of where kind of like my consumer centricity came from.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned into technology, which is not a common transition, but I have found it to be fantastic, right?
Right.
Again, to the point that we were just talking about, I think it's given me an advantage of always having a very consumer-centric view and bringing others along, right? That we
Yeah.
need to be doing more of that. At the end of the day, we are trying to influence and sell to other human beings. And that is incredibly difficult to do. It is so hard to change habits. And so for technology developers, engineers, to your point, but it can't be, let's develop something and just push it out there.
Yeah.
Because you might think it's really cool, but if it's not really serving a need, then changing consumer habits, as I just said, is very difficult.
Yeah.
The analogy that I like to use is that if it was really simple, then we would all be healthy. We would
Yeah.
follow our doctor's orders, right? Because they would just tell us, like,
Yeah.
don't smoke, don't drink, and we would just do it immediately. And that's obviously not
Yeah.
right. We
No, that
just-
doesn't happen.
It's
Yeah.
it's we have our habits that
Yeah.
are challenging to sometimes change. So
Yeah.
that history has served me really well. I specifically came to Cox Communications to lead all of our marketing efforts for Cox Mobile.
Wow.
Cox Communications has a very, very long history, right? The company's 125 years old. It's a family-owned private business, which is fantastic. It really allows for the culture of the organization to be very family first, right? Employee first.
Right.
So the owners, right, the Cox family, are obviously a family, but they see the employees as an extended family.
Oh,
So
wow.
it
That's nice.
it is an amazing
Yeah.
culture to be a part of,
awesome.
and that was a huge attraction. So for me, it was a win-win. I was going to be
Yeah.
able to go and launch a new MVNO, which is a complete roller coaster of a ride, and I say that in the most positive and fun way possible. But it really, launching a business is just, it's a lot of exciting work, and so doing that in a company that really puts its employees first, it was a no-brainer.
Well, great. Sounds great. Now, so Cox has moved into the mobile domain right now. You're a new MVNO. I think it's the right time. If you look at what the cable MVNOs from Charter and Comcast are just smashing it on the post-pay acquisition side.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. What's Cox's approach? What's your differentiation, or what's the message that you want to give to bring customers into your mobile community?
Yeah, so our peers, as you've mentioned, have shown this works, right? And that's where I think it really starts to lend a little bit into convergence that we can get into in a second. But we want to be able to bring these categories together for the benefit of our consumers. So I wouldn't necessarily say that our intention is a different one, right? And it's fantastic that they've had such success, and we know that we'll have the same. In terms of what's different is I want to be very careful and intentional about ensuring that how we move with Cox Mobile will be really simple. What we learned a lot from consumers is there's a lot of options in terms of mobile plans in the US, maybe too many options, or I don't understand how to shop. I don't understand how to compare back and forth. A lot of large MNOs have added a lot of value, right? Or could be perceived, maybe not perceived as value, but what it does is that it doesn't really allow the consumer to understand, am what I'm paying really, is that really a good value for everything that I'm getting? So I might be getting Hulu or Netflix or Spotify or whatever that may be, and it just becomes a lot more work for them to kind of go and figure that out. So our plans are insanely simple. It's 2 plans. There's a metered plan at like $15 a gig, and then there's an unlimited plan at $45.
Oh, right. Wow.
That's it. It includes like what you would expect, right? The unlimited talk and text, and neither one of them has a contract, and you can switch from either one whenever you want. You just go into an app, or you go onto your account, you switch, and so as your needs change, you can just do that. And it's the simplicity that I think is probably what's really different.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we continue with that, right? That as we have any of the same, competitive challenges that our peers and our competitors do, that we don't start to accidentally make things more complicated for consumers, because then we'll just be a me too. We'll just be like everybody else, right? So sometimes it's so funny how being simple and just clear, transparent for the consumer can be so hard to do.
Yes.
So we just have to stay true to our mission, right? And that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, it sounds great. And also, obviously, bundling in the rest, simplifying not just the mobile package, but all the other offerings that come from Cox Communications, right? That's the mission, is how do we bring that all together? So that's your next mission, is the convergence side, right?
Absolutely. Have you been listening onto my work meetings, by the way?
Oh, really?
No.
I have. We taped it. There's been some wiretapping we've been doing on various
You were the one that was
customers.
tapping into that call. No, you're absolutely right. Looking at, it's also interesting what is happening within the organization in terms of, you have an employee base that has historically sat within, the fixed side of the business, and that has historically run at a particular pace, and now entering mobile, which is a completely different, insanely fast pace. And I'm super proud of the organization in terms of how quickly they are adjusting and moving. So it's not a, hey, so you new kids, when are you going to act more like us? Like
Right.
this is
Yeah,
these are
yeah,
our
yeah.
processes.
Yeah,
This is how BAU. I can't stand the term
yeah.
BAU.
Yeah.
How like you should do it this way. Not at all. It is. We heard the message loud and clear. We need to act more like the mobile category. So how do we transform our fixed business to act and feel and be just as agile and have the speed of
Yeah.
market that is mobile? That is hard. That is
Yeah.
also really hard. And so there's a large transformation that's happening there within the organization, and just super, again, I think connecting to the previous portion of our conversation, like the culture allows for that,
Yeah.
because it is so inclusive that people will be really open, right, to new ideas.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
super excited. But you're right. The consumers will at first see it as bundling, just as you said. That is the term that is going to feel most natural to them.
Yeah.
That's fine. We should always understand what consumer language is and use their language, where appropriate. That said, convergence is so much more than a bundle, right?
Yeah,
Convergence, and some would argue, especially if you're an engineer, that real convergence isn't until you have network convergence. And that is the
Yeah.
behemoth. That's
Yeah,
the piece
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the absolute hardest.
Yeah.
That's what's going to give us tons of operational efficiency.
Yeah.
And I don't say we, Cox Mobile, like the entire category industry is some time away from that, right? So it's
Yeah.
not like network convergence is going to happen in a year or so. And so we need to kind of look at how do we evolve from the initial convergence piece, which is really just a price convergence,
Yes. Yeah,
to product, operational, and then ultimately, right, we think about it as different domains. We think about, marketing as a convergence domain, which is kind of the domain in the phase that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Product and services, operations, and then lastly, network,
Yeah.
which will just take the longest. Convergence is a theme that I would expect that we would see at Mobile World Congress for years to come, because it
Yeah.
is a multi-year journey. So
Yeah.
excited that at least we've started.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think you make an absolute brilliant point there. Convergence isn't just the bundle, it's the billing,
Right,
it's
exactly.
the operations, the customer care, it's your retail channels, your digital online presence. It's all of
All of that.
those elements that you need to bring together. Because anyone can say, well, listen, I'll
Exactly.
throw in a mobile plan now and it's an extra $10 a month on whatever.
That's been already done.
Yeah,
That's old.
that's done. Yeah. And again, even from your marketing perspective, the message to the market now, you're not going out with two separate
Exactly.
messages.
Exactly.
You have to combine the value proposition from a marketing perspective. And yeah, I imagine it's an enormous amount of work. But are you seeing this at Cox as well, Catherine? It's something that I've picked up from several people I've interviewed is, when you look at those elements of convergence from the billing, from the care channels, that were traditionally dictated and built by IT, right? So IT said, this is the system that's going to provide that customer experience. Has it transformed, or is the mission or the journey that you're on now to transform that so that experience is driven by the business, right? So it's the business telling, this is how it needs to look and feel. This is the experience, rather than you building the system, and then we kind of got to work around and figure out how. Is that something that's prevalent from a cultural perspective in Cox as well?
Absolutely. I would not say that we are at the end point, but the mindset, which is sometimes the hardest piece to change, is definitely there, right? So you will hear, whether it's from senior leaders, my peers, the technology needs to deliver on the strategy, right? So exactly to your point, we need to be driving our business, in a more consumer-centric, profitable way, and then have the technology, deliver that for us. So,
Yes.
Is there still a journey in terms of kind of where our capabilities are? I would say that that's the case for any organization right now.
Right.
And I think that's why so many, it's so fun to be here and kind of see just right before we were going to start this interview, your colleague shared something with me, and I
Right.
said to her, I need that.
Oh, really?
I said, I've been asking for that. And what I get internally is that is very hard to build.
Yes,
and you just
yes,
told me
yes.
that it's actually quite easy. So I need to learn more about that, right? So it's, how does the innovation of different partners as they are innovating? I love what you said before, right? That, convergence is ultimately bringing all of those pieces together to drive simplicity for the consumer.
Yeah.
No consumer wants to have to do the work, right?
Yeah,
When your
yeah.
systems don't work together and they feel like they're on a call with
Yeah.
care for 5 hours
Yeah.
and they're being moved from person to person because your systems don't work together,
Yeah.
that's a terrible experience. Like, we shouldn't put it on them. So,
Yeah. And even from a billing perspective, because of course, traditionally we're a billing company, but imagine two different bills that look the different, that have completely different vernacular descriptions, legal terms. If you got that as a consumer, you'd be like, I can't reconcile this. This is not, to your point that I liked before, simple,
Yeah.
right? So it's driving that simplicity at every touch point for the customer to really give them value for choosing your service, isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah. And I don't think that convergence, right, as we're describing it, is going to be a nice to have.
Right.
It will be an absolutely necessity to compete, right? So you just mentioned the bill, absolutely. Your contract and your terms agreements, like why would you have two?
Yeah.
Why would you have multiple ones for every single
Exactly.
different product that you may have? So all of that needs to be simplified because ultimately consumers' lives are very complex, right? And their attention is being pulled in many different ways. And I think that with more innovation, that's not necessarily going to stop. And so I think that it's the providers that will be those that are most simplified and making it easy for consumers, right? And
Yeah.
again, I think, I say this and it sounds so easy. It just sounds like, well, of course, everybody should be doing that. But it is so hard, as I said before, it is so hard to stay simple.
No, exactly. You said something before, which is I wrote down on my notes here straight away, and it's something that I've picked up at this show prevalently the last couple of days, but even going back to the MWC Las Vegas show that we were at in October, the need for collaboration within the industry, I think, has never
Necessary.
been bigger. Even competitors are collaborating at some degree with each other if they look at sort of sharing network and base stations and
Yep.
towers and all these different things. Is that something you're feeling as well as you go into this mobile world, the need to collaborate with this multitude of partners, this huge ecosystem?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No one who goes it alone is going to win.
Yeah.
The ecosystem is too large. It continues to expand. And I think that what is going to be challenging for any organization is to have the self-awareness to understand what is your core competency, what do you stick with, where do you partner?
Yeah.
Because I think that the challenge that I have seen is many organizations can feel, oh, we absolutely can develop that. Oh, we have people who can do that.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a whole
yeah,
team
yeah.
that could do X, Y, and Z. That'll just save us some costs. We don't have to go external.
Yeah.
And so it's the ancient, kind of question of build or buy. And I think that as there are more partners, larger ecosystem, that question will be even more challenging.
Yeah.
But I think that you absolutely have to
Yeah.
collaborate. That we won't be able to compete trying to do it all.
Yeah. And also something else I wanted to get your thoughts on. And this is something that I think is written in that article from this morning, and something that I think has happened after the pandemic. I think there's now an inherent obligation for service providers and operators in every country, from everyone we speak to look after the societies and the communities they serve. But pre-COVID, we're businesses, right? It's all about the dollars and cents. It's all about the feeds, the speeds, the functions and features. But now something I notice is this inherent need for tech for good. If you look at Vodafone's sustainability, if you look at the initiatives that are everywhere around education, if you look at, my opening question about and your dog X-ray. Yeah. There's something fundamentally now more altruistic about what we're doing. Do you feel that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that I don't know if any of us thought that in our lifetime we were going to see and experience a pandemic, quite like this, and it was very life altering for all of us in different ways. And I don't think that there's any going back to it, to what things were exactly like before. So we had a lot of terrible things coming out of the pandemic, and I think that there are some really good things, right? So to your point, organizations being more altruistic, I think it's a really good thing that's coming out of that. So right as we were going into the pandemic, we had a campaign about calling and checking in on elderly folks, right? Because they were some of the the folks in our population who were most impacted, whether because they were sick or they just couldn't get out, they couldn't get their own groceries, and so that was a way of being able to, right, like that simple technology you've had forever in terms of being able to like make a call.
Just go
ahead and do that.
Yeah.
There's a project that we recently finished as well, Project Convey. It's a like a video call, but we'll have emojis, much more expressive emojis than what you might use on your phone. That is meant for autistic people.
Ah, right.
Yeah, so,
okay.
I have an autistic brother and stepson, and understanding emotion and that kind of facial recognition of what is the emotion is much more challenging for them. So it's a really interesting project on how to be able to, help them do that. So there's all sorts of different ways of, how do you use the technology, right, to help bring people together.
Because this is what I think, and I've said this before on this podcast. I think before the pandemic, technology was always getting a bit of a bad rap. Kids spend too much time on their phones or on their tablet. Facebook is destroying the world. In the pandemic, where it underpinned our whole lives, the connectivity, like the ability to do video calls, the ability to carry on your work, the ability to do e-commerce, and there was a digital propulsion of adoption driven by that. But I think it made all of us in the industry realize, hold on, it feels good to do these really good things, and we're on the right side of things. And I think technology got a rebrand.
Yes.
It was almost like the pandemic was a warm, this is what we can do, right?
Yes, and when you were asking me the first question about in terms of what I'm interested in and why I said, like, I really want to see those proof points continue. I think when social media was first, taking off decades ago, I remember having this like out-of-body experience thinking, oh my God, they're like children running with scissors.
Yeah.
like it's just like everybody wants to use it. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And we weren't quite really aware yet of the negative implications. It just seemed like the coolest thing in the world. Now we've seen the implications of, what it can do to young children, right? And the bullying that happens with teenagers. Like we didn't know that the first time we were like creating an account to a social media platform. So now, to your point, this pivot, we're so much smarter, right? We've learned so much more. And so I don't think that it needs to stop innovation or creativity. But we have those learnings so we can do it better in this next, generation of digital and evolution. Like I really do feel like we're on this cusp of like insane innovation coming. And so, so much of that is because we have, 5G, and as it becomes even more ubiquitous, for years it feels like we've been waiting for 5G, and we're just at the beginning. So I think things will be so amazingly different in 5 years.
Absolutely. Well, and I love the analogy with children with scissors. The analogy I think about, particularly with Facebook, by the way. Have you seen the movie Fantasia, the Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey? It was almost like that. It was also, I can get the buckets. It was like an innovation that's going to make my life easier, and it ends up flooding everything. And every time he tries to destroy it with the axe, that's really what it always felt like with that. Now, I think there's a more contemporary, rather, innovation that people are already now thinking, okay, there could be some negative externalities to this, and that's the whole generative AI,
Yes.
chat GPT thing that is really big here this week. What are your thoughts on that? Just, not from just your personal thoughts on A, how powerful that can be, and B, what could be the potential downsides?
I am optimistic, right, based on what I just said, that we will not have forgotten the learnings, right, of the last 20 years or so, and that we look to find ways and kind of guide consumers, users, right, the ecosystem, that we just take the high road as these are being developed. Innovation is always going to happen, and we shouldn't try to slow that down or pause that or stop the creativity in any sort of weird way. We need to, as a human race, continue to innovate. But I'm looking forward, right? Like, is AI going to maybe help in social, right? Is it going to help bring more connection, right? One of the biggest challenges that we have in the world, like usually we go to all the medical things, right? This health issue, that disease, right? I think one of the biggest crises that we have, definitely in the United States, is loneliness. Loneliness. And the impact that it can have, right? The impact that it can have to you physically in terms of developing illnesses because you're alone and you're kind of internalizing that. But also, the tribalism that we've seen in the United States over the last several years was developed out of a root cause of feeling alone and now feeling like you are a part of some tribe, whether you would have agreed with those thoughts and views years before or not, right? So when you have more human connection, it can inoculate from that type of thinking. So I'm really optimistic of, can we take that technology and focus it for the improvement of humanity as opposed to just kind of, again, back to our other piece,
cool.
Like, this is cool, let's just develop this, right?
It just did my homework for me.
Exactly. Yeah, right now we're hearing about a lot of kids writing their papers with that, but there are much better uses for it.
Yeah, my kids, we have to watch the chat GPT around them. They like it.
It's so interesting, and I talk about this with my stepchildren. I was working with a partner. I just wanted to set up some training for my teams. And we were looking at dates, and she says, well, and it's a large provider who's here, so I won't say who. And she said, well, I've got all these sessions all around the world for them. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, congratulations on that engagement. Like, what exactly is it? And she says, basically, in short, she was taking all of the large, massive technology company, all of their 20-something-year-olds, and teaching them how to write an email.
Oh.
It was like 3 different templates. Here is how you would write an email to an executive. I was just like, but they're all brilliant, and they've probably gone to like amazing schools. And she's like, yes, but they've also grown up like texting their whole time.
Right.
So they don't know really how to communicate. Like, how do you write an email where you're trying to influence someone in a way where it has to be, you have to get to the point, right? But you also have to kind of. Yeah. I was amazed, and so it's situations like that, right, where when we're talking with the kids of, yeah, you might get through this paper, but these are actual skill sets that you're going to need for later in life.
It's actual writing, because, when I was at school, I had a fountain pen right, in England, and you filled it. You had to do cursive writing, and the English teachers were very strict. But those skills have escaped us now, and could even more with things like ChatGPT, with voice to text. You don't even have to write.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, after the summer vacation, you would come back to school, and they give you a pen, and you're like, I've forgotten how to write. But it's bringing back some of those traditional skills. Which I think could be really interesting as well as we continue to evolve and the technology continues to hit us. So listen, Catherine, we're approaching the end. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh my God,
it's fantastic.
already over?
No.
It's so much fun.
I know, this is,
Chatting with you.
we could keep going for hours.
We could.
But here's the fun bit, right? What I do for my guests, at the end we have a quick fire round called TGI to go. And I'm just going to give you two options in a scenario. You tell me your preference.
Okay.
But if you're sitting comfortably, we'll do TGI to go. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right.
TGI to go.
Question number one, we're in Barcelona. Picasso or Gaudi?
Picasso.
Yeah. Cool. Have you been to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona?
Not in Barcelona because
Right.
I've been working the entire time,
Yeah.
but have seen a lot of his work in Madrid.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
looking for. I have Thursday off, so looking forward to being
Oh.
able to catch some art
Oh.
before I leave.
Really nice. That'll be really cool.
Yeah.
Staying in Barcelona, and we have our Amdocs party tonight. So this
I
one's.
cannot wait. I hear it's going to be amazing.
I think it's going to be pretty great. The hottest party in town.
That's what I hear.
So would you have sangria or cava?
Sangria.
Sangria. Nice, nice. Sticking on the theme of the party tonight, singing. If you had to sing or dance at the party tonight, which one would it be?
So easy. Dance.
Oh, really?
I love to dance.
Oh, right,
Would
excellent.
not exactly want to sing in front of all of these people.
A travel one for you now. If they moved MWC from Barcelona, would you rather it was in Shanghai or Las Vegas?
Shanghai.
Yeah, I've never
Absolutely.
been to Shanghai actually.
I have been to Shanghai. It's a beautiful city, very modern. And I was actually just saying to a colleague right before
Right.
we came in that, really interested in diving deeper into the Asian mobile market, right? Because it's
Okay.
also like Europe, right? Super advanced, amazing technology. Just feels, a place where I can learn a lot. So would love to be able to go to, they can move it to Shanghai. Maybe they do want to be.
They do one in Shanghai. They do the MWC Asia out of Shanghai.
I have to go.
And they do MWC Americas for Las Vegas. So that's like a little plug for the GSMA because they made us their podcast sponsor. You see. But you should check it out. The Vegas, we'll be there in Vegas with the podcast. But yeah, to get into the Asian, to speak to
Yeah,
Shanghai is definitely a
absolutely.
Now, you have dinner tomorrow night, and your dinner guests could be either Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg.
Elon Musk.
Yeah?
Elon Musk. His previous girlfriend said something in an interview that I thought was interesting. This was after she had had their second baby. And she said something to the effect of, dude says, and she called him a dude. It was so funny. Dude says weird stuff, but he does the right thing.
Right.
Now, the way that he's handled, the Twitter layoffs may be interesting, but just would want to understand more, right, about his vision and particularly when it comes to Mars and Plan B, and so I think that would be an interesting conversation.
He's the ultimate thought leader, right? He's thinking a lot far ahead, and I think that's what makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and just the role that I believe that he's trying to play within sustainability, and so I think that there are some of his initiatives on what can we do within the planet, but then also what is that Plan B, and how would we be able to get to another planet if needed, right? So futuristic, right? Even as we sit here in Mobile World Congress, that's even beyond what we're talking about here.
Exactly. So we're out of time. I want to say thank you.
Thank you so much for having
It's
me.
been
This
really
has been
great
a
to
delight.
meet you. I hope you enjoyed it.
So much.
You're now part of an exclusive gang club,
know.
and we have something to induct you into that community. But Catherine, do you have any final words for our listeners before we close off today?
Keep listening to you. I think you have a fantastic podcast, really great information. So they should keep tuning in.
Thank you very much, Catherine. It's great.
What a great episode. Thank you very much, Catherine, and all the folks at Fox for coming to visit us this week on the Amdocs booth. It was a great conversation, and what a great episode. So stay tuned as each episode and the associated guests are certainly not to be missed. Seriously, it gets better and better. And please leave a review on your podcast channel of choice if you feel so inclined. It certainly helps us. Visit our website, amdocs.com/The Great Indoors, where we have all back episodes and a cornucopia of assets related to TGI. In fact, there's just a video has gone up there, which is a beautiful sizzle reel of our week in Barcelona, so please check it out. And with that, I think I've earned another cool glass of Cerveza. I need to slow down. And all that is left to say is I'm Matthew Roberts for Amdocs in Barcelona, and I'll see you next time, wherever you are.